good day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back to the hometown commander, and we're back with another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to outbrew the magic world. Today we're continuing our fun through Ravnica, celebrating Ravnica Remastered, and we're covering the Izzet clan, the Izzet guild today. And I didn't think there was any commander that was more fair, mostly because I've never brewed a deck around him, and that's Niv-Mizzet Parun. And as always, the deck list will be down in the description below. Niv-Mizzet Parun is a 6-mana 5/5 dragon wizard that cannot be countered, has flying. It says whenever we draw a card, Niv-Mizzet deals 1 damage to any target. And whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, we draw a card. Next called Niv-Mizzet Pings, because that's the goal of the deck, to ping our opponents for damage. We're going to do that a couple ways. Drawing when our opponents play things, drawing ourselves, and then trying to amplify that damage when we draw to make Niv-Mizzet hit harder. We obviously cannot draw enough cards in our deck to feel 40 damage to each of our opponents. So our hope is that, of course, our opponents will help us out along the way. But if we can take advantage of us playing our own spells to hurt our opponents, or magnifying the damage that happens every time we draw a card, it can make this even easier. So first we'll talk about the things that make our damage each ping a little bit bigger. Then we'll talk about some of our spell slinging stuff in the deck, and then we'll go through a playtest. So let's start with the pinging stuff that's going to make us ping. And the first I want to mention Niv-Mizzet the Firemind, because this is actually a second copy of our commander, kind of, has a very similar effect. Whenever we draw a card, it deals 1 damage to any target. Now, it doesn't have the whenever an opponent casts a spell, we draw a card text, but we could potentially get this out with Niv-Mizzet at the same time and be getting multiple triggers instead of the just one. We have things like Oher. Whenever a red source we control will deal damage to an opponent, non-combat damage, if it has less power than Oher, it gets pumped up to its power, so it could potentially make that 4 instead of 1. Soulfim can double the amount of damage to a permanent or player instead, so that would help Niv-Mizzet go from 1 to 2. Torbrand takes it and adds 2, so that would go bring it up to 3. And then we have things like City of Fire to triple that amount of damage, which would turn the 1 to 3 or potentially more, depending on what effects we have out. So that's just the small things we can use when we ping. But let's talk about our spell sling cards. So we have things like Exalted Flamer of Tzeentch. Whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Gutter Snipe, whenever we cast an instant or sorcery, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. Harmonic Prodigy can double up our Niv-Mizzet triggers and some of our other triggers that happen when we cast spells, dealing more damage and doing other effects. Veyron, same thing, can double up those abilities, but only when we cast an instant or sorcery. And then things like the Locust God, whenever we draw cards, we can make 1/1s with flying and haste to, again, help us deal some more of that damage. And Stormkill Artist can get us treasures to fund more spells. Most of our spells are going to be drawing us cards or dealing damage in some way. We do have some that some counterplay, so we can affect our opponents that way. Some removal. We want to just get a big bulk of spells here, so that way we can draw cards off of Niv-Mizzet. Of course, we want to try to play things like Windfall to disrupt our opponents, as well as Seagate Restoration can draw us a bunch of cards at once. So we have some big splashy draw spells, but we also have things like Opt and Consider to just work through our deck one at a time if we need to. Playing on Unexpected Windfall and Big Score, some of my favorite draw spells that also get us treasures as well to fund more spells. But again, just a good block of spells here so we can make sure that we can cast them and deal damage to our opponents. We're also playing something like Fiery Inscription, which deals damage every time we cast an instant or sorcery, so that can help us fund that along the way. Ominous Seas, whenever we draw a card, we put a foreshadow counter on it, and we can remove 8 of them to make an 8/8 blue Kraken. This can help us in certain scenarios to get a bunch of creatures on the board if need be. Of course, we're playing the classic Curiosity and Ophidian Eye. Both say whenever an enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, we draw a card with the right setup. This will keep the loop going of Niv-Mizzet dealing a damage and us drawing cards. And of course, we want to make sure we set up the right situation on the board and the amount of damage. Otherwise, we will just draw our entire deck out and lose the game. Ophidian Eye doing something very similar. So we want to make sure that we could set up some of these damage buffers or damage enablers as well, so that way when we go to start this loop of drawing cards until we draw out and dealing damage to our opponent, we can make sure we have enough damage to kill all of our opponents. So with the Fighting Eye and Curiosity, we will draw all of our deck out with those effects because I don't believe... Okay, Fighting Eye is a May... Oh, sorry, Curiosity is a May. I apologize. They're both May, so we won't start an infinite loop, but we can go all the way through our deck if we want to, and that would allow us to damage our opponents out with the right effects. Teferi's Ageless Insight allows us to draw double the cards, and Thousand Year Storm going to allow us to potentially go off on these casting effects, getting multiple copies of our spells, getting more value out of it. I'm playing something like Midnight Clock so we can recycle our library if need be. If we draw lots of cards and end up dealing, pitching a ton of cards away and having too many of our hand, we can do something like Midnight Clock to shuffle our graveyard back in and keep drawing and doing it that way. To be honest, there's not a ton in the deck to talk about as far as value goes because we're really just trying to draw cards and ping our opponents. Teferi can make tokens that get bigger the more we draw cards, which is really good as well. And the -12 can effectively set somebody back a long way as far as that goes. Lab Maniac and Jace, Wheeler, and Mysteries both have abilities that say whenever we would draw a card while our library has no cards in it, we win the game instead, which will just give us a way to potentially use those Curiosity combos to win us the game as opposed to risk losing the game. So that's kind of fun. It just gives us options as far as that goes. I'm not entirely sure what more to talk about because, again, this is more of a combo deck than anything else. Everything else in the deck is just trying to there support us, getting enough mana and getting the pieces down to make it happen. Well, let's get into our play test. We start off here with a 3-lander. Serum Visions, Mystic Remora, and Harmonic Prodigy don't seem like a bad way to start. Turn 1, let's get our island down. We have a choice, Mystic Remora or Wizard's Class. Wizard's Class isn't a bad idea, giving us no maximum hand size. Mystic Remora is not a bad idea either to start trying to get our opponents to give us cards. And we do have Serum Visions to draw on Scry 2. I think I'd set the Remora down here. And hopefully our opponents make us draw cards. On their first turn, it's very less likely, so we'll say they don't for the purposes of this game. Put down the Mountain, turn 2. We can get the Prodigy down if we want. We can get the Wizard Class down if we want, which I think I would probably do here, so that way if we draw some cards with Mystic Remora, we're not filling up our hand too fast. Of course, we want to get our way up to 6 for Niv-Mizzet. Turn 3, we see another Mountain. Let's say for the purpose of this, we got 1 card with the Remora, and we get a Temple of Epiphany. I'd probably put that in tapped and get our Prodigy down. Let's say on this next course, we again get 1 more card, turn 4. So here we go. We have a Mountain, and we have a Soul Ring. Now, the only problem with that Soul Ring, right, is it's not going to help us cast Niv-Mizzet. We need all colored pips, but it can help us get some other things down, including potentially that City on Fire, which is pretty good. This turn, we could go ahead and Serum Visions, which I will. We draw a card, and then Scry 2. We have land 5 and 6 in our hand. I'd probably put this Guild Gate on bottom. I don't mind the Valakut Awakening back into my hand, only because it can draw us a bunch of cards. So we'll untap, get this Mountain down, and I believe we're still 1 mana off of City of Fire. But what we could also do is just tap Harmonic Prodigy to put the City of Fire down. We could also level up the Wizard Class, which I don't think is a bad idea either. I think let's do that. Draw 2. We see Blasphemous Act and Teferi, which is great. That would leave us enough room to cast the Teferi, so let's do that, and then we'll minus it down to get that 2/2 out. And then this turn, all we're missing is that blue source. We put Shivan Reef down, and then we can get Niv-Mizzet down. And now we have access to that Teferi, so what we'd probably do here is 0 the Teferi to draw a card, get a counter on it, and a counter on our 2/2, ping somebody for 1. And now all we need to get is the City of Fire down and some other things, and we'll be cooking. We'll go 1 more turn, see a Swiftfoot Boots, get that Mountain down. Again, if we drew any cards on our way around with Mystic Remora, that's just more damage to our opponents. So let's say we drew 1 more that way. Torbrand seems like a great place to start. We could Jeska's Will. Let's say somebody has 6 in hand. So we could go Torbrand and City of Fire, I think. Plus the Teferi again to draw, ping somebody for... it would be their choice. So I imagine they would triple it first to 3 and then add the 2. So it would be 5 instead of what would be 9, because it's our opponent's choice since we're dealing damage to them. But that's okay. Now we're hitting people for 5, and that would end this turn. But again, now on everyone's turn, now they're under the gun as far as Mr. Kimura goes. Maybe we say we draw 1 cards, on their turn. Moving to this turn, player land 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 mana up. We could Valakut Awakening our whole hand away, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and draw 6. That would let us dole out, again, 30 damage, which I don't think is a bad idea, as well as we would get the 1 off of Valakut Awakening. So that would probably be my next play, dole out that 35 damage total, swing at somebody with Niv-Mizzet. And actually, I'm now just realizing that actually Harmonic Progeny would double all of that. So we would actually be doling 70 damage out there to our opponents, which should hopefully get us to the point where we could end the game. But as you can see, you're building up a board state there, drawing the cards, pinging your opponents, protecting Niv-Mizzet if we can, and just trying to hit our opponents out that way. But let me know, what do you guys think of Niv-Mizzet pingers down in the comments below. If you have a Niv-Mizzet deck, let me know what cards I'm missing. Again, this is my version 1.0 of the deck. I'm going to be missing something, but this deck was a ton of fun to build. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.